Good morning, good morning, good morning, Dr. L. Teddy. How you doing?
I am wonderful. How art thou? I'm representing for
I see.
HBCUs. I
I
got
see
on
you
my
got your
March of
Marshall 100.
100 stuff.
You know what? By accident, me too, because this is a Bennett Bell shirt, Boss Bell.
Come on
So we
now.
didn't even plan that. Look at
Didn't
that.
even plan it.
Didn't
Didn't
even
even
plan
plan
it.
it.
So how were your holidays? How'd everything go? How's everything going
You
with you, sir?
know, I'm still in birthday mode
That's right.
and
We celebrated a
I'm
birthday.
still
The big
celebrating.
50. Look at that. Look at
Don't do
that.
me. Don't do me. Do not do me. Okay. I am not the big five. It's so funny. And I'm gonna get him to come on one of these days. Remember, I was telling you about a friend of mine who's an educator. He's a history teacher like you, and you're gonna love having him on.
Oh
He,
yes.
um, he just turned 40 today. Today is his 40th birthday, and so he was in the March of 100 with me as well. He also went to Florida State with me, and he we were talking about. He's like, "Well, you know me more than half my life now." I said,
Well, we are not alone today. We have a special guest with us. She is normally hanging out in the chat and giving us great gems from the
"Hey,
chat. And
Des,
hey, Des, what's up, boo? And you know, Des, as always, you are welcome. If you are camera ready, honey, let us know.
mhm.
Um, but she
I'd
agreed
love for
to
Des.
join. Huh?
I'd love for Des to come on too, though, to add
Yeah.
to the conversation.
Well, you know, Des got to be camera ready, honey. But if he's camera ready, he can, I'll send you the link. But so she's agreed to come and hang out with us a little bit today, and we're going to talk about some things. It's been a minute, a lot of stuff going on, and so we're gonna share that. So we have Miss Proverbial One joining us today. I'm bringing her up. Hey, honey.
Hello, hello, hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it on this good Sunday morning, honey.
Hey, now.
Yes.
So go ahead and let the people know a little bit about yourself so that you can share your pearls as we go through this conversation today.
So, my name is Proverbial One. I am a business education teacher. I have been in education for 6 years. I've taught both middle and high school. My educational career did start in middle school. I was at that time teaching middle school math, and I taught middle school math for 2 years. And then I went to administration. I went to working in the board office and dealing with teaching teachers how to properly implement technology in the classroom. Because around that time, this is
Okay.
whenever the states was really pushing out money, preparing us for things like what we have going through right now. So I spent several years working in a district where I was teaching teachers that just because you have a computer in your room, that does not mean that you need to have them on dictionary.com looking up stuff versus a dictionary in their hand. So then
Got you.
from that, I took a turn and literally left education because of all of the things that students are never the reason that teachers leave education. It's always administration or other teachers and stuff like that. So I
Right.
actually
Right.
made the choice to leave education and I started working for the federal government in IT as well. Um, but then I ended up getting sick and decided to come back into education because that would give my body the rest that it needs when it needs it. So I came back
Got you.
into education, and when I returned into education, I returned in high school. I came back as a high school teacher, and I taught high school business, preparing students for Microsoft certification and getting students Microsoft certified. After teaching in high school for 2 years, um, a very, very interesting and important conversation for my life happened with one of my students, which caused me to make the conscious decision to go back into middle school education. And I'm sure we'll discuss that a little bit later. But yeah, I made the decision to go back to middle school, and I'm currently working in the same district that I was in previously when I was teaching these teachers how to properly implement this technology in the classroom. So that is me. And I'm
All
40
right.
years old.
You said what? Say that again.
And I'm 40.
You 40, you better go ahead 40. 40 and
40 years
fabulous.
old.
All
Okay.
y'all older than me. That's so
Yes.
good.
First of all, that's a lie. So don't let him tell that. Don't let him do that. Now, I ain't gonna give you
Tell Teddy
50,
how
but
old
I
are you?
damn sure ain't gonna give you 40, okay?
I
Okay.
just turned 42.
Thank you. Okay. Don't he look like he's
My
15?
sister says that until you hit the five, my sister's a math teacher, or now principal, but she started out as a math teacher. She said that you have to round up or round down. So
Okay.
whenever I was 35, she said that I rolled up to 40, but she was 31, so she still rolled down to 30.
I'm rolling down to 25, so
You look like you could be.
That that's the thing. And I always tell people, I joke. I always tell people the first time I met El Teddy in person, he rolled up in sneakers and a backpack. And I was like, really, dude? Really? Like you already look 15. You gonna roll up with a backpack?
Yes.
But
I
anyway, we
need
have a few things to discuss today. So first of all, I'm gonna let El Teddy lead this conversation because he's done more research than I have. He was following this very closely. He would send me articles every other day as this whole conversation was happening and different things were coming out about who the next Secretary of Education was going to be. So he was really on it. But we have a nominee, um, and we'll get to Congress and everything in a minute, but we do have a nominee, and so Miguel Cardona is the nomination for our next Secretary of Education. He comes out of Connecticut. El Ted, you want to kind of give us a brief who he is, what he's
Okay,
done, kind of thing?
sure. Miguel Cardona is the son of Puerto Rican. His parents are Puerto Rican. He's of Puerto Rican descent. It's so hard when you try to explain Puerto Rico relationship to the United States because I want to say whose parents immigrated from Puerto Rico, but since
Right.
Puerto Rico is technically a part of the
It's
United
a part of
States,
us.
that's kind of not how this works. Even though they are their own country when the Olympics come, but I,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, all of that. Anyway, but his parents are Puerto Rican. He is of Latinx descent, and some it brief information about him. He was taught through the public school system. He started teaching right out of college at in 1998. He became a teacher in 1998 who quickly he taught 3 years, and then in I think '01 he became an AP, an assistant principal, and then in 2003 he became a principal. I think when he first got appointed principal, he was 27, and then soon thereafter turned 28. So when he first became a principal in 2003, um, he was 27, 28 years old, which is really young. Um, Really, that's not heard of a lot in a lot of areas.
Right.
He
Right.
quickly, started to move up the ranks within Connecticut school system. He served as assistant superintendent of teaching and learning from 2013 to 2019, and then in 2019 he became commissioner of education for the state of Connecticut. Um, he checks all of the boxes that Biden needs with, diversity, somebody that came out of the public school system, somebody who was a classroom teacher. He's a big proponent of, why is my phone going off like this? I'm
I
sorry,
don't
y'all.
know, honey. You are
Um,
popular.
he is a big proponent of students going back into um, the school sites, students and teachers going back into the school sites. He did, though, make sure that the students in his district were supplied with the hardware that they needed to facilitate school from home with laptops and so forth, so that all of the students in the district did have those. Um, that's the gist of who he is. I'm sure during this conversation we will unpack pros, cons, and the like, because it sounds good, but those of us in education, there are some things that we certainly can pick apart and say, hey, I got my eye on this, or we're gonna,
Hmm.
be looking at
Right.
you about this. So yeah.
I think unfortunately most educators, we are very pessimistic and very what's the word I'm looking for? Um untrusting. We've seen, it's kind of like heard it all before kind of thing. And so we are very wait and see people. Proverbial one, anything about that biography give you any first impressions based on just that basic biography of who we talking about?
Okay. So let me I heard everything that you said, El Teddy, but let me tell you my personal philosophy on administrators. Let's just jump there. I personally feel that every administrator, be you a assistant principal, be you a principal, be you a whatever superintendent, I personally feel that all principals and assistant principals should have to walk back and sit in the classroom for at least 1 year after they have been in administration for at least 3. My reason for that is once you have stepped out of the classroom, you lose the understanding of the struggle. You're no longer sitting at home writing lesson plans and preparing things and trying to get students to do the work, submit it, grade it, get it in the grade book, get it in the portal. You lose the trench understanding once you get into administration. And because of the fact that the time in teaching and being in the trench was such a short period of time, that causes me concern. Because as just like in our regular life, we would be very, very careful in choosing who is able to speak on our behalf. Really be, you would not just say, Crystal, Crystal Good, she can talk for me. You wouldn't just do that. You would need to know that we had the same heart. We
Hmm.
had the same understanding.
Right.
That at the end of the day, everything that I was going to say, that I was going to say it would really be in mind. I'm
Hmm.
not going to be standing there with my own agenda. And when someone moves up the ranks that quickly,
It
it
makes
gives
me concerned.
it gives me the concern of, okay, you came into education with the agenda to jump out the
Absolutely.
classroom so that you
Absolutely.
can be more on the money making side and the decision making side than in
Absolutely.
the helping of the students side.
I
And
agree
so that's the
100%.
only thing so far that at snapshot makes me say, what do you mean classroom for 3 years and then gone? Because
Mhm.
at that point, the only thing that you know how to do is do an observation based on something that you can't do. And that
Um, Let me, and this is something we talked about a little bit earlier. Let me do you, and this is for those people outside of education. When I talk, it's very important that I told you he became AP in '01. George W. Bush took office in 2001. Nickleby, what year did Nickleby, which is No Child Left Behind? No Child Left Behind came into um implementation. It was after '01. That I know. It was
Yeah,
that
it was after oh 01.
it was
Hold on.
after
Go
'01.
ahead. Keep talking. I'll Google you.
But my point is, for me, I'm for a modern administrator, for me, somebody who wants to tell me you have taught students in modern 21st century time, you have to have been in the classroom as a classroom teacher after No Child Left Behind
So
was
January
implemented.
of 2002 is when it was signed into law.
Okay, thank
Mhm.
you. So if you were not in the classroom after Nickleby was implemented, you are really out of touch with what teaching
Facts.
truly is, because there's such a big shift and
Facts.
change in where and what teaching was before that and after that. So that's the first thing that really gives me pause. Go ahead, Ruby.
Well, I was just going to say this. I agree with everything. And again, if we, the three of us all are on the same page because what we know, and I can't speak specifically to him, but what the three of us know is people who are on that track usually, like we've already said, They come into education already looking for the next thing. They were not totally vested in the classroom. Most of us know, and studies have shown that teachers don't really hit their stride until year 3, year 4. So if you only were in the classroom for 3 years, that means at best your first 2 years were pretty much
Trash.
right. That means that you knew somebody, you was connected in some kind of way, and it was already in the plan.
Already
That's my
happening.
opinion. That's my opinion. I don't have no facts. I don't know nobody in Connecticut, but this is what we know from our experience. And I'm gonna say this: when I was getting my master's degree in educational leadership, one of the last classes that we took was something dealing. The word had leadership in it. I don't remember the exact name of the class now, but I remember my professor saying he always had this great sayings, and a couple of things he said to us. One thing he said to us, and this was towards the end of the class. I mean, this was our last semester. We were getting ready to graduate, get ready to get our master's degree. Everybody was applying for principalships and all of that stuff, right? And one thing he said to us was, he said, if you are still thinking like a teacher, you're not ready to be a principal. And what he's saying is because that's a different mindset. It's not bad, okay? If you're trying to be a principal, you have other things to look at, and you're looking at a bigger scope than just your classroom. But that's what he said to us. He said, listen, if an issue comes up and you are still seeing it from the lens of the classroom teacher, then you're not ready to be on the other side. And so so I say that to say, if you've been in education for, he started in 2001, so we're talking about 20 years now. You've been in education, and 17 of those years you've been on the other side. Then you don't, like we've just said, you
Well,
don't
he started in 98. He started in 98.
98. So okay, 24, 25,
23 years. 23.
23. Thank you for the math. Thank you, because whew. But so that means that 20 of those years you have not looked at it from the lens of a teacher. And let's be clear, if you've been on the district level, you haven't looked at it from the lens of a principal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Let me and I just want to interject what you're saying. It's so interesting because Rudy Crew, who a lot of people know in education circles, at one point was superintendent of schools in Miami-Dade County. His last year, he implemented a board rule. Every principal and every AP and counselor had to teach one class. Had to. If you had a teaching certificate, if you had certification as an educator, as an instructor, and you were at the school site. Now, if you were at the district level, no. But if you were on a school site and you had teaching certification, you had to teach one class. Now, as you know, it probably was a lot of ways that principals got around that.
right, they
Some
played around with
principals
it.
put subs in there, or had
Right.
another teacher
Or
coming.
toward a senior level
Figure it
class
out.
where they could probably
But
work on their own.
It's just a line.
there are some principals, and I had a principal that did it, that told the whole building during these times, do not try to contact me. Do not call me unless the building is burning down. And even if it is, AP so and so is
Will be
my
in charge.
designee, and
Right.
they will be in charge because I will be in the classroom with my students. And you had a lot of principals that did that. And what it did was, yes, you need to make sure you have that principal mindset, but it still made you understand the plight of the teachers, and it made you engage with them more, and it made you more sympathetic to what was going on. So when situations arose that came to your desk as principal, you could firsthand say, yep, I understand totally. Or even you might have taught the same students and you could have said, yeah, little Billy, yeah. Mhm. So yeah.
Go ahead.
And you know what? My thing is this. Once you actually come into education, I understand that there is a teacher's mindset, there's a principal's mindset, there's all these different mindsets based on where you are. But regardless, you still have to have a educator or a teacher's heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you lose your teacher's heart because you now have a principal's brain or a principal's mind, then you disconnect. Whenever you no longer can understand what goes on in the trench, that's when you get all of these additional levels of I need you to do this paperwork and that paperwork and the 19th piece of paperwork that has nothing to do with whether or not your students are learning and implementing the information that is in your standards. And it's a whole bunch of stuff to make their life easier later when you're the one that's teaching 315 students and they just got 6 people in the office that they don't like. So
Let me ask you, ladies, a question about the politics of it all, though. Some parts of me are sitting here wondering, is this truly the best person for the job, or is this the person who best checked all the boxes that the Biden administration had? Because there are other individuals who check just as many boxes. Did he acquiesce, coalesce, kowtow to the Latino caucus within, the United States Congress, and to other voices that were saying, we need you to have a high-ranking person of Latin descent and so forth? Was it a situation? Oh, and just make sure that they've been in the classroom. And you look, well, let me just make sure he done been. Oh, he had the 3. All right, that's good. I'm good with that. You know what I'm saying? The vetting process for the candidate, was it? Were you really looking for the best person for the job, or were you just truly trying to check all of the right boxes? I just want to get you ladies take on that.
I believe it was a box checking situation. I really do. Um, and we just have to remember that Biden is very, very strategic in what he does. He's very strategic. So whenever it came down to the factor of him having a black or a female of some form of coloring descent to be the vice president, then there was a list, just as there was a list for this. So I am very, very sure that there was possibly some better candidates or other candidates that would have checked these same boxes, but he needs that appearance of this person has your back, the appearance of this person has felt your pain, sees your pain. But unfortunately, I do believe that we are going to find ourselves in a situation of hindsight being 2020 when it comes to this nomination.
So I'm gonna say this. For me, I agree. But again, and this might be the cynical part of me, if that's the word I was looking for earlier, that cynical. And I say this to you guys offline. I really truly believe this was there was something there, because some of the other names that came up were union leaders. And even though that would have been a great thing, as somebody who formerly worked for the teachers union, I never fully embraced the idea that they would really truly be comfortable with having a union person in that position, because I really think they would be so afraid that everything would be so teacher, you know what I'm saying?
They would have got
I think that's a bad thing.
Politicians too, because politicians do not like unions. And
right. So I thought it was a good. I mean, it was great that the names were tossed around, but I would have been shocked. I'm just gonna say that I would have been shocked if either one of those two names, whether it was Randy Weingarten or the former president of AFT.
I really hoped that he would choose the black lady that you said you knew. Her name is
out of DC.
What was her name? Oh, it's gonna come to me. Hold on, I'll tell you.
Her name escapes me now, but that's actually who I wanted as well, because I've worked with her, and at least then, I mean, that was a few years ago, but she was very much on the side of teachers, but not. She held teachers accountable, but she didn't beat teachers up, and there's a difference. Hold me accountable. I don't have a problem with that. But making me a scapegoat and beating me up is my problem. And she was very much about, say it again, Teddy.
Fenwick.
Yes. And again, I worked with her here in DC when There were a lot of things going on. I ain't gonna go
Let's
down that road today. We ain't got time, but a
let's
lot of things going on here in DC as far as teachers and what was going on. So again, holding me accountable but not making me your scapegoat or your punching bag, I'm good with. So yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue. Because let's go into now that something miraculous happened down in Georgia this week. We're not going to talk about the other stuff that happened this week. Let's talk about the good stuff. We now have the Democrats. I'm going to say we. The Democrats now have control of the Senate. They now have control of Congress. I mean, the House of Representatives, Congress, i.e. Congress, whatever. Mitch McConnell will no longer be majority leader. It will make things easier. We know that that's not a magic red carpet and everything is just going to be money rolling out. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of things that are going to happen that we're probably not going to be happy with. But let me read you guys an article of what Biden promised. Well, not the whole article, but some of the top items of what Biden promised as it relates to education. And now that they do have the House and the Senate, it will make some of these things easier. But let me ask you realistically what you guys see. So the first thing we have is the reopening of schools safely. What do you think that looks like going into a Biden administration?
I don't
The
know.
word safely. Okay, so let's do SMART goals. SMART goals, the M stands for measurable.
Right.
The word safely is not measurable. I need for
Mm,
you to give me some specifics. The
mhm.
reason that I say this is because I've said this multiple times to parents on a regular basis when I have to call them and they're pushing this, the children need to be back in the school, the children need to be back in the school. And I work in a small school district. And my question to them is this: you are at home with your children, keeping them safe. There are 40 of us educators in the building, plus office staff. If COVID is still showing up at the building now without your 400 students there, if you kill off the teachers, who's going to teach your kids? Because at least right now you have teachers on Zoom.
Well, the thing about it is too. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll cut you. I'm sorry.
So if the science teacher dies, we don't have a whole bunch of science teachers just waiting. We don't have a lot of English teachers just waiting. It's not a list of people that's running and go gung ho to get into education, if we be honest. And
Mm.
if they actually have been into education, they are running the other way. Being a teacher is hard. So, with that being said, we want to reopen safely, but what does safely look like? Because the school that I previously worked at, students are in the building. Even right now, well, it's Sunday, but students are in the building. The school system that I work in, we are 100% virtual. I have not had a student to walk in the school building this year, but they are scheduled to return on the 20th. So it's like, what are we going to do? What does safely look like? And how are they going to make sure that every district everywhere is following the guidelines in order for us to be able to be safe? Because what they previously said, or at least the previous administration said, was we're going to cut funding if you guys don't go back into the building.
Mm.
So now it's saying reopen safely, but what does safely look like? We need a rubric. We
Here's
need a rubric for this.
Okay,
And
go ahead,
until
Elton.
I need a
my
rubric.
concern is, first of all, um, how are you going to impose and implement this from the federal level? School systems are governed from the state level. The
Right.
lion's share of the funding that goes to a school comes from the state. The federal dollars that go into the school system are for things like SPED, Title One. Those are basically where you're going to get money, and it's mainly Title One, because SPED, even most of the SPED dollars still comes from your state government. So even if the Biden administration came along and had um procedures and protocols and standards that they wanted to put in place with regard to schools reopening, how are you going to put teeth into that? Because then what you then have to think about is you have to go to all of those state Department of Educations. And there's a whole lot of states out there right now that want no parts of what the Obama administration has going on. And we're talking about huge states like Florida and Texas that are telling you right now, we want no parts of what you people
And
have going
Georgia.
on. And
Him and the
Georgia
Biden administration.
want no parts. So even if you said this is something that we want to do and this is how schools should open, how are you going to implement that, and how are you going to um how is there going to be accountability to being sure and certain that these things are taking place when you know full well there will be several state governors and then they're going to delegate to their state the head of education for that respective state, their state department of education, to go contrary to all of this stuff and thwart anything that is coming down the pipeline from them. So that is my concern, and I just don't know. I think they can do like the CDC does and put out recommendations
Right,
and
right,
say
right,
we hope that you will follow them, but the true and actual implementation of it, and even on the other side, I'm not just thinking about the red side, but even on the blue side where people might be saying it's just not safe right now for us to force kids back into the school because of the numbers and all of the statistics in our respective areas, and it's just not feasible and safe right now for us to be forcing kids back in school. And I think that him making that statement, oh, within the first 100 days we want everybody, all the kids back in school, I don't know that you can, I don't know that that's feasible.
Well, that's actually what I was going to say. I remember months ago, probably back in August, when we would do the show. Every show, El Teddy would have to drink a nice big old gulp of water, and we would go state by state. He would start at the
Mhm,
first state. We would go
mhm.
all 50 states, and we would talk about what each state was doing. And that's because each state has different needs. They're really, I agree with you, El Teddy. I think there would have to just be recommendations, but I don't think there's any way you can make blanket statements, especially when each state has just has different needs. We could just take the politics out of it and say a state like North Dakota doesn't have the same issues, concerns, or needs as a Florida, just by population, just by school size. So I think that we can put recommendations in place. I think that um, the biggest thing is going to probably be making sure that the schools are getting the resources and the money that they need in order to keep the schools safe. Because the reality is that stuff is expensive. So let me go to the next one. Because money is on the list. Money is on the list. So let me go to the next one. And I put these links in the description box, you guys. Um, so the next one gets into teacher pay and respect. Again, I don't know if this is a Department of Ed issue because unless you're going to send the money to the, and they do have increase of Title One money that's on the list, but unless you're going to send the money to these school districts, again, a lot of school districts teacher pay is based on tax money, income, that kind of thing, and so again, I say yes. I want to make more money. I mean, who wouldn't?
It's
But I
also
don't know what
collectively
that looks like.
bargained in a lot of school districts with the union. Pay is collectively bargained with the
Absolutely,
union
it
and
is.
stuff like that. So you saying that and even after that the voting members of that union still have to vote up or down on that thing that they collectively bargained on.
Right.
So like you said, really be, and then it wouldn't even be equitable if they say, okay, we're going to attach it to Title One. All schools are not Title One schools.
Absolutely.
So that's not equitable either.
Well, let me speak on this just a little bit. So, where I am, we are not union. Where I am, we do not have a local supplement.
Mm.
Where I am, and every school district that I've ever worked in have all been Title I. Here is the thing when it comes to Title I. You can give a bucket of money, but it's really, really hard to critique where all it goes.
Facts.
Title I comes down in a bucket, and then it is dispersed based on the needs assessment of the district. So if the district realizes that they need 3 more paraprofessionals than they had last year, and they've got way more homeless students, and they need to take care of this, that, and the third, it is a very good chance that the teacher increase that everybody was expecting might not show up, and especially being the fact that we don't have a union to fight for us. So unions are really, really great in these big areas, but whenever you get to the into the small counties and all of these things, there is not this group of that has a bargaining chip that's going to help you. You literally have to sit down at the table when you're doing your contract to fight for yourself and have the willingness and the ability to stand up and walk away from the table to say you don't actually appreciate what I bring to the table and I deserve more. But you just
I
have to be
mean,
careful with that.
even with unions, sometimes proverbial one is still inequitable. I remember when the state of board of education, Department of Education in Florida had made this rule that said that they were going to increase teacher salaries by this percentage point. And then, and what will happen is based on, each district, they gave each district a lump sum, right? But it had to be allocated toward teacher pay. But here's where the caveat came in. The caveat came in that the union was kind of in cahoots with the school board and the superintendent. And so what ended up happening is when it got to the part of pay, it was delineated based on your evaluation at the end of the year, and your increase was dependent on what level you ranked in your evaluation.
What
And
evaluation
so,
the people who wasn't in the classroom had to give you.
or God forbid, you at a school where the principal don't see it for you for whatever reason, not that you may not be necessarily doing well in the classroom and with those students. And so that became a problem because it was all based on the evaluation, 100% of your increase. But then it wasn't equitable because of those situations where you were having principals that had their friends and they wanted to make, because the principal, each school had an allotment of money that they had to divvy up. And so principals were helping out their friends or people who they saw it for, as opposed to it being equitable. So then they had this big union thing because there was a big blow up. And so then they made it 50-50. 50-50 was dependent on test scores from students, and the other 50 was based on the evaluation, which still didn't make any sense because little Johnny could wake up on the wrong side of the bed this morning when we have to take the statewide test, or my principal might not like me and give me a whole roster filled with level 1 students, and I don't have an ice cube's chance in hell of getting good scores anyway. So there's so many, even with the point that I was making was, even with unions, sometimes these things are just so hard to parcel through, and the equity in it is just not there.
Yeah. All right. Let me go to the next one. Rights and equity. We know that under Betsy DeVos, she rolled back a whole lot of policies that were meant to protect the LGBTQ community within the schools. And so one of the big things is that they want to roll back a lot of those policies. Now, that's something they can do. Anybody want to add to that?
It's
Mm-mm.
necessary.
That's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
Whenever you are not being open with everybody where they are, you also take away the teacher's ability to be to have the connection to the students that they need to have, because for everything that a teacher goes through, there's a student that connects to them because they're in the same place. So that's my thought on that.
Okay. Higher ed. Biden released, this is a quote, Biden released an expensive and ambitious plan during the campaign that included free public colleges, loan forgiveness, and more money for low-income students to pay for college. Again, money, 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 money. All of that sounds good. It sounds really, really good. Where's the money coming from to do all these things? Like, let's be clear. I'm the first one in line for the loan forgiveness. I'm the first one in line, okay? But I'm also realistic in saying, Obama put some plans in place, and it sounded real good until you pull back the layers of those plans and realize that it wasn't as easy as it sounded. There was. Go ahead.
The thing about it is, I would have thought that Biden would have tempered his putting out of expectations of him with regard to things that involved money, because you're about to try and spend a lot of money for COVID relief packages and so forth, which is going to take precedent over any of this stuff. And so once you start to take all of this money to pay for COVID relief and relief of businesses and so forth and so on, how then do you come back and say, okay, I need this other lump sum of money? It's just, there's not a limitless, barrel of money there. And rightfully so, Congress is probably going to have pushback and say, hold your horses now. We gave you money for COVID relief. We need to start to, refill back up the coffers so as to be able to maybe at a later time. So even with all of these things that he has on the expectation he had, I would venture to say I can't see this happening prior to maybe his third year at best. I don't
see that happening until we get out of this pandemic.
Exactly, and that's the point.
Realistically, like you said, I do anticipate more COVID relief packages. I absolutely anticipate that. I'm not gonna put no money on it. People are saying 2,000, whatever. But I do anticipate there'll be some more money coming to American citizens as it relates to that. So that is really going to be the focus, as it should be. Let's be clear. Proverbial one, you want to add to that, and I'm going to go to the next one.
We do need to make sure that we take care of our own, and that is really what this boils down to be. But at the end of the day, I believe that the only way that that he's going to be able to do any of these things is that he actually takes the time to start reading these bills and take out in all of them where we're sending money to everybody and their great grandmama. Because we're taking care of everybody else's country, but we're not taking care of the people in our own. So once they actually get that understanding that we're going to be the people that's got to pay this bill back. So maybe you should protect the people that's going to later have to protect you and pay for you. So hopefully they'll get that together so that we can balance as a country.
Okay. So it's only two more, you guys. Immigration. So they're talking about, one of the first things that Trump did as president was he put that executive order for the immigration ban, so forth and so on, which affected a lot of international students. So they're going to walk back a lot of policies that were put in place under DeVos to sort of tighten the international student situation and, basically go back to what it was and make it easier for, international students to come and study here in the United States. Also, they want to put in, protection for dreamers and a path to citizenship as it relates to dreamers here with higher education. So again, because those are policies that are within the Department of Education, again, that's something that it would be easy for them to do because it was something that was already in place. What do you guys think about those things?
The immigration stance mainly would mainly hit colleges because that's where you have the bulk of your people coming in from other countries. They will come in on visas so that they could attend certain universities and so forth. Not that you don't have some of that on the K through 12 level, but the travel ban and so forth like that mainly hit the colleges hard, which took money out of the pockets of colleges because grad programs and especially were hit really hard because a lot of, I know from working in the admissions office and in graduate admissions at my university when I was in school when I was in school, most of our applications were from out of the country,
Mhm.
not from within the country. And so that a lot of colleges and university took hits for that. And so that's why I think that's going to tackle that's their way of appeasing and helping out post-secondary education and stuff like that.
But at the same time, when it comes to K-12 instruction, we as teachers are not prepared for these people that's coming from all these different countries. Let me explain. I had a student last 9 weeks that spoke no English, none. So as I was on the Zoom session, I was saying the things, but having to type everything that I was saying in the chat box for her to take it, copy it, paste it into her translator so that she knew what I was talking about. Every assignment that she completed in Spanish and then translated it to me. She sent an email 7, 8 times a day. So I don't have a problem with all these things being opened back up. But at the same time, what are we going to do to prepare the people that's in the trenches and teaching all these students to give them the things that they need? Google Translate don't work for everything.
I think that's more so a district
That's it. You
problem.
took the words right out of my mouth.
That's
That's it.
it, because I'm coming from Miami-Dade County Public Schools, which is we are more than prepared because we've had to deal with every time there's a natural disaster in the Caribbean or in South America. All of those kids, because America a lot of times will take on families and things. All of those kids come straight into Miami-Dade County Public School System,
See,
and
we
they
don't have
prepare us
that.
for that, and they tell us, listen, you can't even become a teacher unless you have a certain amount of certification um in ESL and ESOL and stuff like that, because every teacher, no matter what you teach, whether it's math, English, science, art, band, business, dance, you have to be able to meet the needs of the students on the public school level.
Yeah.
So that goes back to more professional developments that need to be taking place on the district level. And then that has to come from state mandates that say, hey, because the state has to be able to say, like our state already told us, say, hey, we got the earthquake that happened down there. Y'all about to have a lot of Haitian students that's coming up to these school districts in South Florida. Prepare yourself. Here's extra money for you
Yeah.
to have more professional developments
I
and stuff.
agree. I agree. El Teddy took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that's a district issue. I know
Mhm.
when I worked in DC public schools, I worked 3 blocks from Chinatown, and that was before gentrification, and it really was a true Chinatown. And we had a very large Asian population, but the way, and I can't speak for outside of DC, but the way DC worked at the time was when students came into the district and they did not speak English, they were not immediately put into a general ed classroom. They were put in ESL classes, and they could only be there for a certain amount of time. And the ESL teachers, their mandate was to not only teach them what they needed to know, but they were teaching them, English as well. And so I think they couldn't be in that class longer than 2 years, and after that they had to transition into general ed. And so we got a lot of those students, and then to even be eligible to be in that class, they had to take a test. So if they had a certain working knowledge of English, they were put in general ed. But we did have the support and the resources, because trust and believe, I don't speak Mandarin, okay? Didn't then, don't now. But there was a lot of support there. Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't issues and things of that nature, but when the issues came about, I had a resource in the building, because again, my school had a large population, so we had 3 teachers in the building who were, and they spoke fluid Mandarin and the other dialect. It's another dialect that's escaping me right now. I mean, I had situations where parent teacher conferences, I needed to have somebody in the room translating what I was saying and things like that. So I get it. It definitely is hard. It definitely is a challenge. But yeah, that's a district level. And again, that goes back to these funds trickling down and where they're going once they land in the district.
That's a good topic that I would like to tackle one day.
So let me add it to the list.
Because I know we tackled SPED, but we haven't tackled ESL.
You're right.
Which
We have not.
is a very larger than people think population of the school district. I remember being department chair not only for English but also for ESL, and the challenges that come through with that, and coming from a school district that that has a huge ESL population. A lot of states are like that. California, all of the states that border Mexico, even a lot of states in New England, because you do have a lot of immigrants that travel over from Europe and go straight into the New England area and things like that. I know DC has a huge African population.
Yeah.
That there, and even in Atlanta, there's a huge, larger than I thought, Nigerian population. They even have a huge Nigerian consulate right in not far from where I stay. So they're not going away. It's going to get
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's not going away
That's
at
the
all.
only problem when it comes to small school districts. Small school districts are getting smaller amounts of the pot, so they don't have the amount of training. We literally have, for the 6th through 8th grade, we have 2 ESOL teachers, and they get the students for what we would consider additional learning time. That's all they get. So what we do as teachers is we actually invite the ESOL teachers into our Google Classroom so that they can see the assignments that were given and all of that stuff, so that they can better explain it to the students, sometimes more than we can. So what they do during their additional learning time is they go through and they re-explain all of the assignments to the student. And we have our Zoom sessions that are recorded, and so they can go back and play it and then do the translation to it. But for small districts, and there are way more small districts in states than there are large, this preparation is not made.
Yeah, that's definitely a topic that we will.
Yeah, that's definitely, because
add that to the list.
And that could be because I have so many resources that that can be used for, especially for those teachers, like you said, in small district that may not have had the professional development and may not know a lot of the resources, or may not even know what is standard pedagogy for dealing with students where English is a second language for them and so forth. Because even when you really, and I'll be real brief with this, one of the biggest things is when the student first comes, it's total immersion. That is known pedagogy. They don't even want you to speak to them in their native language, even if you can speak their native language. And now those are things like that.
Yeah, they're not allowed to speak. Yeah, they weren't allowed after a certain point. They were not, and they weren't even really allowed to speak to each other. They had to speak in English.
Yeah,
and
different things like that. And then knowing how to deal with it depending on the grade level, because the higher the grade level, the less propensity there is, or the more difficult it is for them to learn the language and stuff and things like that. So all of that, that's a whole
topic. And we can definitely go down that road. So we have a few
minutes. Flash, please, and thank you.
Right. So we have a few minutes left, and first of all, I want to welcome everybody to the chat. We had a few people said it was their first time here, so welcome. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you tell all your friends. Make sure you come back again.
Yes, please subscribe. It feels so weird for me to say subscribe.
I know. So let me a couple of things. Right. A couple of things. Quintessential, one of our riders, She is in Chicago, and she said that Chicago public schools will be reopening. That K through 8 is returning, and then in February the high school students. I know in DC, the plan in DC as of a couple of days ago when I spoke with a friend of mine, on February the 1st they are opening up the schools, but only for struggling students, small groups, and they didn't say it, but basically for their sped kids, so they can start accommodating these IEPs in person. But that is the plan. So they're not opening up for full instruction, and they're making sure they're keeping the ratios really low. But they are opening the buildings for students who just are just struggling and need that extra support. And it's just for small group. And I know it's for elementary. I'm not sure when the plan is for high schools. But so I do notice that there are some small things going on, and maybe the next time we do a show, El
We'll
Teddy
do
can
an
check
update.
his
I'll be
list.
now, I'll be ready. Now, I'll have water. I'll be ready to go
Oh,
through.
right. El Teddy can check his list and see what's going on around the country.
That's gonna be hard.
Mm.
But I do see that a lot. I know my school district originally was supposed to go back February 1st, but the numbers have skyrocketed.
Thank
The
you for
COVID numbers.
subscribing, Angels Girl.
Thank
She
you.
said she's a teacher.
The numbers. Thank you so much. The numbers have gone up. They have skyrocketed here in my county where I work, and so they sort of were like, "Hold on, we're gonna put a hold on that." Here in New England, are you
hmm
saying New England or
I
Nebraska?
think that's New England.
Okay. We have tons of people coming from Europe, South America, and Asian countries, and we have a good system to help folks that come with their spouses and kids. The public colleges have classes. Yeah. So that's why I said it's a county thing. That's why I
Yeah,
said
it's
that's
really
a county thing. Yeah.
but if you are in areas where you are not getting services that you need as an educator, then we got to do what teachers do and seek it out ourselves sometimes. And you know how
Mhm.
they say work out your own soul salvation. I saw the question Quentin Central had about unions and polit and
Politicians.
politicians.
Yeah.
Real brief. There's always been a bumping of heads with unions and politicians only because politicians are trying to do everything they can to save a dollar and save a dime to implement in a whole lot of other places outside of education. Where and even if they do allocate monies within education, they do everything they can to think student only, never to think about teachers and the professionals that are other professionals that are in the building. So when they go to the bargaining table, the politicians have the way that they think about how education should go and how they can save a dollar, whereas the union is there to serve the interests of the students as well as those teachers and other professionals that are in the building. And so a lot of times there's a butting of heads because when the union member comes into the politician's office, they are automatically like, oh dear God, here we go. Because they just don't want to allocate those funds. They don't want to use that money that way. They don't want to, something as simple as planning periods had came simply because of union. A lot of labor laws come because of unions, and that's just really we can go down history of unions and
That's
something.
what I was going to say. We could do a whole history lesson,
Mhm.
but
We could
real
do a whole history lesson.
right. But let's go. If we want to just go back to the beginning of this whole situation, labor unions were the reason why public schools were even developed. Okay, to eliminate child labor, and so
Mhm.
politicians have always been on the side of big business. Labor unions go against that, just at its core. Just at its core. So as you evolve, a lot of times now, in the beginning, there were things that were much needed. A 40-hour work week, safety. Safety measures put in place, things like that. And then when you look at now, fast forward to where we are now with teachers and unions. A lot of times there are things that are bargained or collectively bargained that are just they don't go in the favor of big business. And so when you look at teachers wanting higher pay, that's collectively bargained. When you look at um, something as simple as a sub, and that's a county by county thing. But like in my county, I'm not responsible for making sure I have a sub. There are certain things I have to do. I'm responsible for putting it. We have a system. I'm responsible for putting it in the system. But after that, whether the sub shows up or not, that's no longer my concern. But when I worked in DC, there were certain things that were my responsibility as it related to a sub. So it those are the types of things that are collectively bargained. And so there's just this thing that unions are just seen as the enemy. That unions are seen as, oh, we just want teachers to get away with everything. We don't want them being held accountable. That's just what it's sort of dissolved into. And so you just have a large uh, friction there.
Angel
It
Girl,
definitely
I
goes
would
back to
love
education.
to maybe have you on one day. I've heard a lot of good things about the school system in Spring, Texas. Is that the one right outside of Houston? I heard they pay a lot of money over there. No, but I've heard good things about Spring, Texas and their school system.
Right.
So I'm really curious
And Mr.
about
Fit
somebody
Brown
who was
knew I knew who you were because I knew I know the picture. I knew exactly who you were, sir. Thank you for being here.
there. Right.
um, Spring, Texas high school son did the hybrid program where he worked from home and just came to school for math class and struggled. And yeah, my district we were going to do hybrid starting February the 1st, but they're not even doing that now. Um, it seems like the word on the curb is we might not be going back at all this year. But again, that has a lot to do with the numbers. If they get the numbers under control and the numbers start going down again, I feel like they're going to probably be some hybrid things going on. But it's definitely a county. It's not even state by state. It's county by county.
Hmm.
Right.
Because again, the
Literally.
state where I live in, my county is not going to do the same thing that the next county is going to do. So it's really a county by county. But yeah, so that's really what that is. So we're if you have any more questions, let me put the I ain't put the
Email.
email up, Lord. I'm forgot
Yes,
to put the
please
email up.
email us. And if you have specific questions about your respective districts or something with regard to your particular son, daughter, student, or whatnot, even if you're a teacher and you have questions, please email us. We love going if we already have the information or the resources. We love bringing that to you. If we don't have it, we love going to do research on it. For example, I remember when we did the research on the cyber security systems that were free. If you remember that really being that, and
Uh-huh.
we brought back the little chart and stuff like that because that was a need. So we're always here to try to make sure that we provide you with all of the resources and things that you should need.
I wish you guys could see how big of nerds El Teddy and I are as far as sending articles back and forth to each other about politics and education and things of that. So definitely hit us up and let us know what you guys and we get stuff from teachers all the time. So if there's something going on in your district that you're like, hey, well, this is what my district is doing, and hey, this is what by all means, please feel free to share all of that. Nappy Child says Philadelphia's decision to remain fully virtual indefinitely came as schools around the region grapple with the virus spike. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what we said earlier. I don't know how Biden and them are going to say, "Oh, we're just going to have this sweeping legislation or this sweeping, decision for all the country."
right.
You. That's not responsible. That's not a responsible take at that. And I hate that they said, "Oh, within the first 100 days." We just don't know. Y'all having problems getting the vaccine out. You know what I'm saying? How about you tackle that? How about you tackle the
Right.
vaccine
Exactly.
before you
Exactly.
talk about putting people back in schools? How about that?
Exactly. AJ, the curator resources in reference to what do you mean? We do put the links in all of our videos to the topics we discussed and any type of information that's referenced. We have a couple of videos about virtual learning resources that we have done. We have a couple of videos in reference to like El Teddy said, cybersecurity because so many people now are using their computers more, and the students are all over the place. So different things dealing with cyber security and things like that. But we don't have a blog per se. So was there a specific resource you were looking for? I could kind of maybe direct you. But if you go through our videos, we put the links in all of our videos. Maybe that's something I don't know if we have the time to put together a blog, But maybe that's something we can look at further down in the future. But right now, I just make sure that I put the links, whatever we discuss, I just make sure I put the links in the description so that people can always have that as a reference. But if there was a specific resource you were looking for or resources, you can email me and I can definitely forward you information. Well, email us, excuse me, and I can definitely, get you some resources or point you in the right direction if there was something specific that you were looking for. Um, but I want to definitely want to thank our guests this morning, Proverbial One. I really appreciate your input. Again, I love talking to other educators in other areas because, again, just like education is state by state and county by county, so is the pedagogy. And so I'm always looking forward to and appreciating us, talking and sharing ideas and things like that. So I really appreciate you being here and definitely look forward to having you on again. I don't know if you have any final words, and then I'll go to El Teddy because I'm gonna shut up now.
I just appreciate you guys for having me on. I love to do back and forth with a lot of other teachers, especially teachers from other districts and other states, because it allows us to see that um, we're not on an island by ourselves. We're all going through similar situations, but at the same time, it doesn't matter if you are in a gang infested area, if you are, it doesn't matter. Having a teacher's heart is what counts. And so I enjoy talking to you guys and being able to talk to other people with a teacher's heart.
El
And thank
Teddy,
you again for having me.
thank you for being here.
Definitely, we appreciate you for coming on and engaging with us. Proverbial One. Also to the chat and all of you all in the chat, you all always engaging with us and y'all take us down roads that we don't think. Sometimes we'll come into a show and we'll say we really only got like 20 minutes worth of stuff and then an hour later, because even now we're already an hour and like 7.5 minutes in and we're like, wait, we got so much that we still need to talk about, and now we have new show topics. So definitely, also let me say this: if you are a teacher and you would like to come on and engage with us as well, please feel free to send us an email, and we'll do that. Maybe really be in preparing for future episodes. We could do a quick rundown of here's the topic for our next teacher project, so that
Right,
way they'll already know where we're going to go or what
right,
we're going to do. You and I,
right,
we can discuss that and talk about that.
right.
Um,
I
and
know
that
one of the
way, if
topics that I wanted to speak on next time, so people can kind of keep their eye open. One of the topics I wanted to speak on next time, we brought it up, teachers and the vaccine as it relates to the vaccine. I
Mhm.
think that'll be a good topic. So if there's anyone who's in education who's interested in sharing their thoughts on the vaccine, because schools closed and because it's been such a hot topic, I fully anticipate this being something that is going to come to the table about teachers having to take this vaccine.
Mhm.
So if anyone is interested in speaking on that topic,
We'll
um,
see if we can get some experts in here, somebody to
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about.
yeah. We definitely want to, but again, it's a conversation. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay.
But definitely, feel free if you are an educator or involved in education or just are somebody who would like to come on and engage in the conversation. Please let us know. Send us an email, and we'll, we can work some things out and stuff like that. It's definitely been a pleasure to bring you all of these wonderful topics today to lay it out on the table. Definitely, we're gonna keep our eyes open. Really, be already knows how I am about everything. My eyes will be on Miguel Cardona
Yeah.
and the Department of Education for these yet to be United States of America and what they're doing. And as things come to light and come to fruition, we will hold them accountable. I
Yep.
always say you hold the people you vote for more accountable than you do the people you did not vote for, because you knew the people you didn't vote for weren't going to do anything for you. So there
Fact.
was no need. But the people you voted for, those are people whose feet you hold to the fire. Say, now wait a minute, you know what I'm saying? And so we will continue to do that. There would really be, will tell you, there will be times where I sound like somebody who's on the complete far right compared to my real ideology. So we'll do that for you. Thank you all for everything that you do and being here. That's all we got for today. Love y'all.
Peace.
Until next time.